Close your eyes for a moment and picture the word alpha. What immediately comes to your mind? For generations, society has conditioned us to envision something very specific. We imagine a figure who is loud, boldly aggressive, or physically dominant. We picture the person who kicks open the door, marches into the center of the room, and demands that every eye be locked onto them. We have been taught that leadership is synonymous with noise, that authority is born from control, and that power requires an ego large enough to eclipse everyone else. But what if that entire paradigm is nothing more than an outdated illusion? What if the most profound strength a human being can possess does not roar, but rather, it whispers? What if true, unshakable leadership is found not in the one who dominates the space, but in the one who quietly anchors it? Welcome to the world of the rarest, most profoundly misunderstood mind in the human spectrum. We are stepping into the quiet, boundless universe of the INFJ personality. In a world that constantly glorifies extroversion and relentless self-promotion, the quiet souls are often overlooked. They are rarely the ones who volunteer for the spotlight, and because of this, they almost never receive the label of an alpha. They do not raise their voices to drown out opposing opinions. They do not wear their achievements like heavy golden medals meant to blind the competition. But if you strip away the noise of modern society and look closely at the mechanics of true influence, you will uncover a breathtaking reality. The INFJ possesses a depth of authority that simply does not need to prove itself to anyone. They lead not through the blunt force of a hammer, but through the irresistible pull of gravity. They do not react blindly to the chaos of the world. Instead, they respond with measured, deeply calculated wisdom. While the traditional alpha chases the fleeting applause of the crowd, the INFJ is quietly working in the shadows, architecting the very foundations where real, lasting human transformation begins. While the so-called traditional alphas rely on psychological pressure, intimidation, or overwhelming charisma to drag people toward a goal, the INFJ guides them through trust, subtle encouragement, and an unwavering sense of purpose. People naturally gravitate toward them, not because they are ordered to, but because their souls recognize a safe harbor. The INFJ does not interrupt the speaker to steal the microphone. They observe. They study the spaces between the words. They do not view human interaction as a battlefield meant for competition. They view it as a sacred space meant for connection. Over the years, this quiet consistency builds a fortress of respect. Colleagues naturally seek out their wisdom when the corporate noise becomes deafening. Friends pour out their deepest, most heavily guarded secrets without ever being asked. Entire communities look to them when the path forward is obscured by darkness and hard decisions must be made. The second pillar of their quiet alpha nature is their deep, almost supernatural empathy. Often labeled as empaths, healers, or deep listeners, INFJs carry a psychological gift that goes far beyond a soft personality trait. Empathy, in its truest form, is an elite level of intelligence. It is the ability to read the emotional architecture of a room in a fraction of a second. It is the capacity to understand exactly what a broken spirit needs, and the grace to create a sanctuary for that person to be truly seen. In most human gatherings, the loudest voice forcibly extracts attention. But we must remember that attention does not equal loyalty. People might follow a loud dictator out of fear or sheer exhaustion, but their hearts will always remain closed. True, revolutionary influence only blossoms when people feel entirely safe, comprehensively understood, and deeply valued. This emotional radar gives the INFJ an unparalleled advantage. They can detect the invisible sorrow someone is desperately trying to hide behind a forced smile. They read the subtle shifts in body language, the slight tremors in a voice, the heavy sighs that others simply ignore. They absorb this emotional data without even trying. Because of this profound attunement, people feel intimately known around an INFJ, often experiencing this sense of validation for the first time in their entire lives. But the INFJ does not simply absorb the pain of the world and sit in despair. They are masters of emotional alchemy. With just a few softly spoken words, they can instantly diffuse a volatile argument. They can gracefully redirect a toxic conversation without ever declaring war. They do not force peace upon a room with an iron fist. They naturally manufacture peace through their pure, undivided presence. We arrive at the third undeniable trait, the supremacy of strategic insight over blind impulse. The modern illusion of the alpha insists that a leader must be relentlessly fast, making snap decisions and charging forward without a single breath of hesitation. But blind momentum without a map inevitably leads to catastrophic failure, deeply broken teams, and inevitable burnout. The INFJ operates on a completely different frequency. They completely reject the pressure to move on impulse. When a crisis erupts, while others are sprinting in circles desperately trying to extinguish the immediate flames, the INFJ pauses. They step back into the sanctuary of their mind. This pause is not born of fear or insecurity. It is born of ancient, deliberate wisdom. They are refusing to move until they understand the entire architecture of the problem. That is not hesitation. That is the absolute zenith of strategic brilliance. At the very core of this strategic mastery lies their introverted intuition. This is not merely a fleeting gut feeling. It is a highly advanced subconscious processor of human patterns. An INFJ can mentally time travel. They can sense the trajectory of a relationship or a business venture long before the final chapter is written. They know exactly how a heated conversation will end before the second sentence is even spoken. They foresee the invisible consequences, the cultural shifts, and the hidden motives long before they materialize in the physical world. In the realm of leadership, this foresight transforms into a quiet, invincible superpower. The INFJ has no desperate need to control the immediate situation because they have already mapped out where the situation is inevitably heading. They adjust their sails in pure silence, remaining peacefully steady while the rest of the world scrambles in sheer panic. The fifth dimension of their power is an absolute, uncompromising moral authority. Some individuals lead with a magnetic charm that masks their hollow intentions. Others govern through the cold, dark instrument of fear. But the INFJ commands the room with something far more terrifying to the corrupt. They lead with pure integrity. They absolutely refuse to manipulate people with cheap psychological tricks. They guide humanity by standing fiercely for something real. Their internal compass is calibrated to a higher standard of values, and that is precisely why people intuitively surrender their trust to them. An INFJ cannot and will not simply say what is politically convenient or popular. They speak from a profound, unshakable sense of right and wrong, even when delivering that truth is painfully uncomfortable, and even when it costs them their own comfort, reputation, or relationships. They do not camouflage themselves to fit into a broken system. They do not alter the pitch of their voice to harmonize with a misguided crowd. In an era where opportunistic leaders constantly trade their morals for a fleeting moment of viral attention, the INFJ stands as an immovable mountain of consistency. Their radical honesty becomes their greatest weapon of influence. Their profound inner calm becomes their absolute credibility. People choose to follow them, not because they are legally contractually obligated to, but because their souls deeply yearn for genuine leadership. INFJs frequently underestimate the magnitude of this power. They often look in the mirror and see someone who is flawed, alien, and out of place in a loud world. But it is exactly that profound difference that anoints them as the ultimate alpha. The quiet refusal to sell their soul is the exact trait that makes them the safest harbor in a storm. Finally, we reach the sixth undeniable truth. The INFJ is entirely driven by a transformational vision. They are never merely obsessed with the next immediate step on the corporate ladder. Their deeply philosophical minds are perpetually wired to look entirely beyond the horizon. They ask the agonizingly beautiful questions about what this life truly means. They relentlessly imagine how the world could be healed and elevated, not for their own selfish glorification, but for the fundamental well-being of the human family. Many traditional alphas are ruthlessly fixated on cold metrics, aggressive progress, and shallow performance. But the INFJ is consumed by a sacred purpose. They need to know why their breath matters. When they observe the agonizing gap between the broken reality of the present and the magnificent potential of the future, they feel a divine calling to bridge that divide. This quiet, consuming mission has absolutely nothing to do with feeding an ego. It is about becoming an instrument for a cause far greater than their own existence. Whether they are quietly organizing a community behind the scenes, pouring their soul into a creative masterpiece, or gently guiding a single broken friend through a dark night of the soul, the INFJ is constantly planting seeds for a forest they know they may never personally see grow. The world rarely notices their majestic work in the present moment. INFJs move with the grace of a whisper, but over the span of years, their unyielding effort and agonizing commitment begin to shift the very tectonic plates of the culture around them. They dismantle the walls of fear and build bridges of profound understanding. They lead their people out of the dark valleys of confusion and up the high mountains of absolute clarity.